Did you know that 70% of businesses fail within the first 5 years? How do you avoid joining this business graveyard? Learn from other business owners who have overcome major challenges and gone on to run thriving businesses on the I Survived Business Podcast. If you're an aspiring or active business owner, tune in now to hear their can't-miss inspiring stories.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the I Survived Business Podcast. Today, my guest is Jared Madsen. He's the owner of MADSEN Cycles and also a bike designer. So we're going to talk about their journey in business, some of the hard things that have come up in their business that, really, kink in their works, but yet they overcame it. That's the whole point of this podcast. So welcome, Jared. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thank you.
If you would, tell me about, your business. How did you come up with the idea? How did it start? And then we'll get into, the problems.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds good. We started, I think we're in our 14th year right now. So it was 2007 or 2008 that we launched, and we got the idea. I've been in the bike industry for years. My first real job was in a bike shop fixing bikes at age 15. And I've been in that industry for a long time, and also motorcycles and scooters and manufacturing of all kinds of things. I even did some gumball machines for a while. And so I've always been around bikes and loved bikes. And my wife and I were we took a bike tour through the Netherlands, camping and biking. And I actually had lived there when I was younger and noticed all the cargo bikes around. But when we went back for that trip, we saw all these moms using those same style cargo bikes that used to be used for the baker and the butcher. But now these moms were riding around with their kids in them, and we had just started our own family. It was the first trip we ever took away from our kids, and we got home and I put together one of those bikes like they had in the Netherlands. It had a big bucket in the front. Ours used a wheelbarrow bucket, and we had a lot of fun riding the kids around and enjoying that, and just kept making new prototypes and playing with the kids, and always in the back of my mind thinking like this would be a cool business to bring those Dutch style bikes into the US. And we actually ended up with a different design with the buckets on the back on our bikes, and we launched and kept going and made lots of mistakes and had a lot of challenges, and we're still going. Thousands of bikes later, we just keep going.
That's great. Yeah. So what are people using the bikes just for recreational purposes, or what's your target market for the bikes?
Yeah, when we first started, I was really excited about the cargo and like bike couriers and delivery. And one of our first bikes we ever made, we had a big FedEx logo on the side of it. And it quickly became so obvious that it was moms that were buying our bikes. It's moms that haven't been on a bike since they were a little girl. Probably that's the majority of our customers are young moms with one or two or more kids, and they want to get outside and active and make memories. And so they're definitely not cyclists. We have those too, but the majority of our customers are just recreation, having fun. We have a lot of, diehard customers that will give up a car and only are riding a bike, but most of our customers are moms with kids.
Okay. Do the kids ride on the bike with the mom? Is there like a sidecar or a place for the kids to sit so they ride?
Well, let's see if we can try to explain the bike. It's a long tail, so meaning that the rear wheel is back much farther than a normal bike, and there's a molded plastic bucket that fits back there. Inside the bucket are two bench seats, so you can fit up to 4 kids in there with seat belts. And so you're toting your kids around. There's room for groceries, for pets, for everything. There's like a little soft top covers them up in the rain. And so it's definitely for transporting kids around. That's the main use of it. We do have a lot of couriers and food delivery people that use our bikes, but the main thing is kids and getting them to school and back or wherever.
Okay. Well, now unfortunately we got to cover the problems. That's the point of the podcast. But tell me about some of the difficulties you've had, and then how you were able to resolve them. So what happened? How did it affect your business? And then we'll go on to the plan on how you fixed it.
So I will go back to the very beginning, and the difficulties that I focus on more and that I get more excited about, or that I put my time towards, are more of on the manufacturing side and more of the actual physical production, moving of the bikes, storing of the bikes. And so right from the very beginning, started the company, and this is, back 14 years, the internet wasn't quite as strong as it is now, especially with manufacturers overseas in Asia, in Taiwan and China and Korea, some of those places that we've manufactured. So I found a company in China that was willing to work with us and produce our bikes. And I knew that quality control in China was really hard because I worked for these other companies and been through that. But the temptation of the really great price coming out of China was too great for me. And I went with it thinking we would be able to control our quality. And that first production, that first 2 containers of bikes that showed up, so I was around 400 bikes, we had so many problems with them. We literally were throwing bikes away. We'd take the parts off of them and crush the frames so that nobody could use them and throw them in the garbage. And that was really hard. That was really frustrating. It was a lot of money, but I really felt strong about my name is on that bike. And here we're starting off. I want this amazing product. And then some of these welds were just so bad that we couldn't work with them. So we moved our production to Taiwan, which the quality control is just so much easier. But I don't know if you wanted to get into the solution there quite yet, but it was hard. And that was a lot of money right in the beginning when we didn't have money and we didn't have sales. We didn't have much of anything. The samples that we got from our manufacturer in China, they were perfect and they were wonderful. But when the container shows up with 200 at a time, it wasn't what the samples were.
Oh, so the samples look good. And then when you got the actual goods, what was wrong with them and how much money had you put out to get the containers?
Oh boy, for those first 2 containers, and this is back a ways ago, but I think I was in like $75,000, which was everything we had. I mean, that was all we had. We hadn't pulled any loans or anything, but we had leveraged ourselves. I mean, that was all of our savings. That was everything. And there was a lot I didn't know and didn't understand back then either. And so we had paid for bikes almost 100% up front. And the first container showed up and it was bad welds. It was also bad. The jig that they used to set the bike up wasn't always in the same place. I don't know how that works, but so some of the geometry was different from one bike to the other. So you'd ride it and it would feel completely different. And then those welds, if they're bad, it's painted on top of there. There's no fixing it without having to do a complete new paint job on top. And just by the time you got through that whole process, it wouldn't be worth it. And their reaction is, well, send it back to us and we can fix it. But, you said, they know it. And that's why that's their response. And
how long was the lead to get it? How long was the lead time? Like 6 to 8 weeks or longer?
Oh, yeah. No, lead time is like 3-4 months to get bikes. And so, and it's, to say that we've had plenty of manufacturing problems coming out of Taiwan also, just not the same as China. It's just a really different culture and you need someone doing quality control. I should have hired a third-party quality control company, which I could have going now, I would now, but I didn't know that. I didn't know that it existed. I remember.
Yeah, they were giving you the good looking stuff for the samples and then, right, the rest of the stuff they know. Oh man, how much would it have cost you to send it back and how long of a delay would it have been? Like a year or 6 months?
Oh yeah. I mean, it never happened. I mean, I'd be better off just reordering again, to turn it around twice like that, send it back, have them unload, redo the bikes, load them back up. And I guess it could have been done, but at that point we knew you're not going to do that. So
were you able to do an inspection at the port before the container got to you, or it was already too late? The container was dropped off at your place.
Yeah, we do that now, but no, I haven't set any of that up. I mean, we didn't lose 100% of the container. It was probably closer to 20% of the bikes that we had problems with. And what we were able to do is pull all the parts off of them because they were fine and then just get new frames. So they worked with us a little and gave us a good deal on those replacement frames. And we end up needing spare parts and it worked out, but it was a rough lesson. And it was just, especially at that time of the startup, when that really hurt and it's scary and you think we're going out of business before we even got into business, like,
how did you feel when this happened? I mean, did you feel like you were at fault, or oh man, I'm so stupid, or were you just mad at the company, or was it all?
No, I think I put it on myself. I knew it. I have been through this exact scenario with other companies that I've worked for, but it wasn't my money. I was just an employee and went through problem solving, and we fixed it then. But I knew it. But that price, it was just such a better price. But by the time we got through everything, by the time we're fixing broken bikes, by the time we're stripping parts off and stuff, we were so that there was no savings. There was no, we were opposite. And so that was my next big move, was to start all over again in Taiwan with some companies that I knew about and knew that the quality, it's just a much more Western way of doing business. In China, you have no recourse. It's really hard to have recourse. What your recourse is the threat of your next order. So if you're constantly placing orders with the company, it's easy to say like, hey, we got to fix this or else our next order isn't going to happen. That gives you a lot of leverage. But when you're a brand new startup and there may or may not be a next order, and they know that too.
Well, what about letting the local government officials know in China? Could you do that?
You could, but nothing would happen. Or I'm sure it could at some level, but as a small little startup, there's no way. And no, not in China. Definitely not. They'll sign you contracts you put in front of them, but enforcing that contract is, yeah.
So, all right. So you picked through the bike. You saw that you could salvage parts. I mean, so what else did you do? You took parts. How much did you have to come out of pocket extra in order to get all this stuff fixed and saleable?
I don't know about our financial, how it hit us. At that same time, we were launching the product. We finally had it in our warehouse, and the way we got it out into the market was the Interbike show. It's a big bicycle show that's, back then it was only open to dealers, so bicycle dealers. And we were working on some patents, and we couldn't, reveal anything about the bike. And the patents our provisionals and stuff got written up right before the show. So we hadn't marketed, we hadn't done anything with our bikes. We show up at this trade show and totally brand new, first time we're showing the bikes to anyone or anything. So this is all happening at the same time. So there was a lot of excitement going on with selling the bikes that we did have, that were good. And back then, especially, there was us and one other company with a cargo bike in the US. That was it. And so we opened up at just the right time. It was growing and getting these European kind of bikes were becoming really popular in the US. And we really had a great trade show and picked up some really big dealers in Oregon and in Portland that they placed an order for 30 bikes, which most dealers would order 1 or 3, bikes. Oh, wow. Which we were excited about, 3 bikes, to test the waters and see if they like it. But this bike shop up in Oregon, I can't remember the name of the shop, but they had like 4 or 5 locations and just knew that this was going to work. And so gave me an order for 30 bikes. And so at the same time they were hurting and losing the money, we're also launching and making money. So I don't think it, burst our bubble as much. Yeah, we could move forward.
Okay. So you salvaged what you could. And then did you start putting the quality control measures in place? Like what happened with the company in China? I'm sure you called them and, gave them a handful and all that. And what happened with them, and what happened with your process?
So the process was just to make the move. So we moved to Taiwan to a factory that I had already gotten bids from them, but they were quite a bit higher than China. I mean, ultimately not, after everything was in place. But so I had already started it a little bit, a relationship with the Taiwan company. And, I say Taiwan, we work with like 50 different manufacturers in Taiwan and some of them in China still to get all the parts to build one bike. So it's not all under one roof. It's 50 different, tires, spokes, rims, bearings, seats, paint, frame. The main factory that we work with is the frame factory. That's the most important. And then from there, we can piece together all the parts to put the bike together. So that's how we fix our quality, was just moving to China and making sure that.
You mean Taiwan?
I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, moving to Taiwan and then trying to work with only Taiwanese manufacturers. So our bike is almost 100% Taiwanese.
You should have told the old Chinese company, hey, we're working with people in Taiwan.
Yeah. Yeah, I knew that my recourse with the Chinese company was zero. So you say I gave them I probably called them up and gave them an earful. I didn't. I just knew that was a lost cause and just moved forward and tried to get things switched over as quick as we could. And it was night and day. It was amazing. I had been to China like 3 times trying to get this all put together. And it just feels like every meeting is this full-on debate to change one little thing about the bike or to make an adjustment, or so hard, which I didn't realize. I thought, oh, this is just how we do business, I guess. And I show up in Taiwan and it was so easy. I was expecting days of battle to try to get everything together, and we just sat in a quick meeting and went through all the changes I want and the things upgrades I want, and just want to do this way. And they're just like, okay, that will be an increase, or that saves money or not. And that was it. And it was just so much. One way is better than the other, but I'm used to a Western way of doing business. So it was just so much more Western. Yeah, it was a really great lesson to learn, and an interesting lesson also at the same time.
Oh, so what did you talked about a quality inspector. What did you need to do still to make sure the Taiwan sourcing was going well and got the bikes that you needed, or you didn't need to do anything?
So yeah, I didn't need to do anything. And this is why is in China, try to do as much as they can under one roof. And that's how they're making things so inexpensive, is they made the frames, they did the painting, they did the assembly, they did a lot of the parts all in one giant factory or multiple factories, but they're all owned by one company. So there's no benefit for them to find, if the painter finds a problem with the bike, they want to look over it, because if they send it back to the welding shop to fix that, they're losing money. Where in Taiwan, my painter is a completely separate owner, a separate factory than the frame maker. And so I have an understanding with the painter that I don't want him to paint any bikes that have problems. So he is looking at the bike. If there was any flaw in the weld, if there was any problem, he'll just send it right back to the frame factory to have it fixed. And he's not losing any money to do that, And so, and the same with the assembler. When I have the assembler putting some of the parts onto that painted frame, if they find a bad paint, our agreement is we'll send that back to the painter so it can be fixed. And the assembler's not losing money when they do that either. So there's this built-in quality control in a way, because they're all individual companies. That's a lot more work for me because I'm working with a lot of companies, but in the end, though, the quality is just so much more easy to control.
Well, there's concentration risk you had in China. If anything happened with one company, everything is offline.
Right.
But the trade-off here is it's more expensive and it probably takes longer. And then did you have to watch the quality control at each step and see where there was a bad actor, let's say, or where was the...
I did. In the beginning, I would go to Taiwan for every production run. I mean, the production run was huge for me. And it still is. It's easier now, just we've been established for so long, but that's a huge investment. Like I would be paying $80,000 for one container coming over. So as a startup, that's a lot. It would be everything that we had. Plus, at that time we were also had a line of credit going, and so that's a lot to lose if there was a problem. So I would go over and try to do some quality control, but it was really quick to understand that the quality issues just wasn't the same. The problems that we were having, they're also more specialized. So the frame factory, that's all they do. That's all they can take pride in, is making the frame. So they're really hyper vigilant about giving you a good product. And they do want me to come back and place another order. And so they're focused on making frames, welding frames, doing all the bending, everything just perfect, because that's all they do. And the same with the painter and the assembler and all the different steps in between.
How much longer does it take now to get, a container out of Taiwan? Or is it the same time? And like you said, it's more expensive, but you have less problems.
Yeah, lead times are about the same. So we count on we always count on 4 to 5 months lead time, but they can do it in 3 months if there's no big changes. If, like during COVID, my lead times from some of our manufacturers were a year. I remember Shrim told us they were 450 days out before we could get parts, so, but that was something crazy during COVID that we had to deal with. But I'm usually 3 months. If we're making any changes or we're testing some parts, which we try to do, we try to stay relevant, and our bike changes every production run. There's something new or different. And if they're major changes, that 3 months will usually get down out a little longer, but I'm around 3 months lead time for manufacturing, and then just whatever time is on the water.
Do you have to pay first and then wait all 3 or 4 months in order to get the product, or do you pay when it comes or pieces? Because you have
that's a great
using a line of credit. Yeah, if you're using a line of credit, you got to pay the interest the whole time, and it's hard to float that much money.
Yeah, it definitely is. We've tried to run, and I know people tell me I'm maybe not the smartest to do it, but I've always tried to run just a cash business. We're using our own money. We're paying for as much as we can up front. I don't dip into our line of credit hardly at all. When we do an expansion or we do a new model or something, we will, but it's more there for insurance than anything else. So, but it's still my money, and it's still all gone, not anymore, but back in the beginning, it was just everything we had put on every single order, every single container, which we were doing about a container a year back then. So it would be 1 year, all of our profits, like just going back to Taiwan. And that was a great question that you asked about how much did you have to pay up front? And when I was in China, I didn't know. And I just thought, okay, here's everything. Because I thought that's what you needed to do. And later realizing I should have been a little more informed back then. But what we do now, and what is customary, what normally goes on, is we pay a third down so that they can start buying their parts and supplies they need. And then we pay another third when it's shipped in Taiwan. And then we pay the final third after we received it and do our inspections here in the US. And so that's how we move forward. And that's really common with manufacturing.
Yeah, that's a lot easier.
Everybody's covered.
How long does it take you to sell enough of the container at retail so that you've recouped all of the money you put into it? We're not talking about profit yet, but have you figured out that number, how long it takes you on average to recoup the cost to get through sales of your container?
Including that? No, that's a good question. I can figure that out pretty quick. So we would be, and it depends on the time of the year that we're getting those. So Christmas and summer are our biggest times of the year, but during Christmas, we'll recoup it in less than a month. I mean, just in that one in November, so I only need to sell about a quarter of the container to recoup what we've put into it. And that's not totally true. It's a little less than that.
Right. But it takes you, again, it depends on the time of the year. So the best times, it's a month. How about in the slowest time? How long does it take you to recoup enough where you paid the container?
Well, it would take about a quarter of the year. So we're averaging just over a bike a day for years. That's where we've been. And we were growing more than that. And then when the electric bikes, we almost do 100% electric now. So when we started, there was nothing electric. Everyone pedaled the bike. Everyone bought it and pedaled it, and it was just fine. We still offer a non-electric version, but I think we've killed that whole market. People just assume you can't do it unless you have the electric. So our bike is almost twice the price. So our numbers did go down, our volume, but it's a way higher end ticket, price tag on that bike. So our growth has been more of the increase in the price of the bike instead of the numbers which it was all the numbers in the beginning. But
okay, so you make more per bike now, which is great.
Yeah,
and you sell about the same, so that's good. That's great efficiency. And then in terms of recouping the cost, so it sounds like in month 1 there's 1/3 over outlay. In month 2, let's say the second third, in month 3 when it comes, the third, if we assume it takes 3 months, and then about a month later on average, let's say like in the busy season, you could sell enough to recoup in 1 month, in the slow 3 months. So if we average that, let's say 2 months to recoup your whole investment, you have maybe at any one time for a month or two, you have like the whole container expense out there, but then you start recouping. So it sounds like the total turnaround time on your money is, about 4 months, 5 months.
Yeah, it sounds right. And, I don't look at it in those same terms because I'm financing myself. If I dipped into that line of credit, I'm super aware of that just because we're paying interest on all that, So I know we do things different than a lot of companies out there, but we just feel comfortable doing it that way. And it's worked. So we just keep doing it that way.
Yeah, as long as you have enough money for operations, that's great.
Right.
If you grow, unless you have a good reserve, then it might be difficult if you have to do container at a time. If you do more, more money.
When we launched with the electric and how fast that grew, that we definitely dipped into our line of credit because there's a huge expenses on our side also to ramp it up, and then also just the inventory. I mean, our batteries, I have this small shelf of batteries that is all enclosed in this big fireproof shelving system for those lithium batteries, but it's like we have $100,000 of batteries on this small shelf. It's a lot of money in this really small, compact spot. Those batteries are the most expensive thing we have in our shop. And so, it's nice to see them move and to get that money back. Yeah. So we definitely had to dip into our line of credit to ramp up with the electric. So, yeah.
Do you have to space the batteries, for safety reasons in case one goes up in flames? How far away do they have to be so that the other ones don't go up in flames and burn the thing down?
That's a good. The shelf has to be mobile, so the shelf is on wheels, which I don't know how that's going to help. Only if someone's here to push it around with it if it goes off. But it does have. There's fire board. It's like sheetrock that slides in between every single box. So if one goes up, the theory is that it will burn on its own before it could, ignite the next one. But we'd never do fire break. Yeah. Okay. Batteries are high-end batteries, and we only use the Panasonic or LG cells, and they're, they go through testing and they're approved and they pass safety standards. And there's a lot of black market batteries out there that are causing all the problems for everyone else. But
yeah, have you looked into making this stuff in the U.S. so it doesn't need to, have a 3-month lag time and ship quick?
Yeah, I mean, I played with those ideas in the beginning, but quickly realized it's just not going to happen. I mean, the one thing we could do, we could manufacture our frames here in the U.S. And any bike you ever see that says made in the U.S., that's all it is. It's just the frame. There is no bike manufacturer in the U.S. making components for the bikes. There's no tire company, no wheel company. There is none. When Schwinn, way back when they went out of business, that was the last of the U.S. made bikes. We do enough assembly here. We technically could say made in the USA because we manufacture all of our e-brackets, the bracket that holds the motor and battery in place. We also do the bucket is molded here in the U.S. up in Idaho. We upholster some of the seats that go into the back. We do enough of the assembly and parts that we could say made in the USA, but to me, it just feels ridiculous, that it would just be a marketing thing. And I don't feel like it is. I don't feel like any bike is made in the USA. The frame may be, and you could say your frame is, but you're still going to be 6 times the cost on that frame as opposed to having it done in Taiwan. And having it done in Taiwan, it's a small frame shop that we use, relatively speaking. It's a huge frame shop for us, but it's a small frame shop. But those guys that are welding the frames in there, they weld more frames than any shop in the U.S. could even dream of doing. They are just masters of what they do. The quality that comes out of there, just because of their experience, you could not match it in the U.S. and be anywhere close to the price. So I would love to. It would be cool to do some, but we do as much as we can. We probably could do some other things, but I'm really glad that we do the buckets here in the U.S. That color is really hard on that molding our plastic bucket to match the frame colors and stuff. So we work a lot with our molder. That would be hard if it was overseas.
Okay. Any other big issues that popped up that you had to solve?
We had a container show up and we opened it up to put the bikes together, and every fork, there's 200 forks. And again, lead times of 3 months to get new forks were all too short. There's small things like that. And this is coming out of Taiwan, and just some oversight somehow. And personally, I think they knew, but they don't want to own it, so they show up and So we quickly were cutting forks in half and finding a welder here that could weld on a longer sear tube onto the forks. Luckily, it's all hidden inside the frame, so it wasn't painted. So there's plenty of things that happen. Some of the regulations that have hit us with the batteries having to be, because of all the battery fires that have happened, we have new regulations. Those kind of things are hard there, and you can see how they could sink us. Sometimes we're debating with them and trying to figure something out. The same thing has happened with us. Our bike is a really big bike, and with that bucket on there, we're basically, and I should have gotten into this, but one of the biggest challenges or the biggest changes that we ever made in our business is we launched by selling to bike shops. We had bike shops all over the US. Our largest shop was REI, we were so excited to get that account, and then realized that it was really hard. They were really hard to work with. All the hoops that we had to jump through just to be a supplier for them. And then they came to us and said, they're not going to put our bikes in their shop because they're too big. They're only going to sell them online on rei.com, and which was really frustrating. But we actually decided at that time that we could do that same thing, and we dropped all of our dealers. We dropped REI, we dropped all the dealers nationwide, and decided just to move directly to the customer, which was scary in a way, but we also wanted to have more of that contact, that relationship with our customer, which we did it when we were going through the dealers. We just have a relationship with the dealer, and they just want to make money selling our bike. And we realized with REI, we had to sell almost 4 bikes to REI to make the same amount of money as selling 1 bike direct. And then we had to have 4 times the amount of money to get the inventory we needed to sell to REI. We needed a warehouse that was 4 times bigger to hold all the inventory to ship to REI. And we thought,
oh yeah, and with those,
sure.
I've heard of people working with big retailers, and sometimes they'll pay like net 30, net 90. Sometimes they have provisions, they'll send back unused inventory, unsold inventory. So kind of deals with the devil. Some of the real big ones like Walmart, it's ran to them, or again, REI. And I'm sure you'll mention that. Good.
Yeah, we've been through that. Costco's the worst. I haven't sold to Costco, but the REI, they had a guaranteed return. So if anyone returned the bike to REI, which is really great as a consumer, when you shop at REI, you can return anything and they'll take it back. But they're not taking the hit. They're just turning it right back to the manufacturer, to their supplier. And we're the one getting an old bike back if we're willing to pay the shipping to get it back. And then we're paying back to REI. Yes, it was a big eye opener to work. Besides REI, every other bike shop was just a little mom and pop shop. Even the shop that had the 5 locations up in Oregon, it's still just a business owner, and they're more on my level, right? We're just 2 business owners talking to each other, filling orders and trying to stay in business. But REI was it was so exciting when we got that account, but then the excitement went away really fast when we learned how everything was working with them. And
everything is a trade-off. It's hard to manage those trade-offs sometimes because you don't even know. And the only way I know is I have a friend that sells, I don't even know what, into retail, something related to like bedding. And he said the stores are just, some of their policies are a nightmare, and Amazon's a nightmare. And they just they can destroy your business if you're not really careful.
Yeah. And at the same time, that going through all that with them and making the decision to sell direct to customer, we were all ready and ramped up to see this big slash in, our volume, but we never saw it. We continued growing, and we were selling direct to the customer. And the biggest benefit was the relationships that we've built with our customer. When we sell direct, and it's a big ticket item. So I call every single customer that places an order with us. We call to verify the order, just to tell them how it's all going to work out, because we're only selling 1 a day, on average. So we have this ability to build these relationships, and our customers, that's who sells our bikes. I mean, we're a small company moving a lot of bikes out of this little shop, but it's our customers, and they're awesome. If they get a bike and it has a scratch on it, maybe in shipping something happened, they don't like the scratch, but ultimately they still want the bike. Maybe I'll send them a t-shirt, and they're happy as can be, and just happy that they're talking to the owner and just getting that recognition, like, man, I'm so sorry your bike got damaged. What can we do for the bike shop? If they got a bike with the scratch on it, that means they can't sell it for full retail, and they just want cash back. They just want to be reimbursed for that scratch. And that's really hard. It's such a different experience working with those two, because the end user, they're the people that want your product. They're the people that are excited about our bike. They want it, even if it has a scratch. Of course, nobody wants a scratch, but I hope you understand what I'm saying. But and we have these relationships with them. We almost, with our marketing, like all of our online presence, it's all generated from our customers. They send us videos, they send us photos. We get amazing things from our customers. We ask them to do things for us, and they're all over it. It's a really cool community, and we have a product that just kind of fits into that niche. There, it's people getting together and going on big group rides and doing these amazing things that I can't imagine even paying someone to do some of the things that they come up with on their own.
Okay. Well, very good. Well, Jared, thank you for coming on the podcast. I know it's not easy to share the hardships and all that. It's, it feels embarrassing. I've had a lot of hardships in business, as everyone had. So you talking about this stuff, I think is going to be super helpful for other business owners and other people, so they can at least have a chance of avoiding some of those mistakes and prospering. So that's what this is about. And I really appreciate you being here and sharing your info. So thank you.
Yeah.
Last question for people that are interested in your bikes. Where do they go? Like, can you give me a website, or, where can they find your products?
Yeah. If they website is MADSEN Cycles, but if you Google anything Madsen or bucket bike, you're going to come across our bikes. It's the one with the big colorful bucket on the back. That's it.
Okay, very good. Madsen Bikes. Well, Jared, thank you again for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was great.
Now that you've heard from active business owners who have overcome serious challenges, consider implementing what you find useful to help your business not only survive, but thrive. Visit isurvivedbusinesspodcast.com.